Welcome to the Dino Dean Show, and I'm your host, Dino Dean, the Dean of Talk Radio. We have a power-packed show lined up for today. The call-in number is 646-200-0067. Once again, that call-in number is 646-200-0067. You guys can hit me up on Facebook, Dino Dean Show. You can also follow me on Twitter, Dino Dean Show. You can also shoot me an email, and that email address is dinodeanshow@hotmail.com. In our second segment, he's back with us, Dr. Delbert Blair. He will be talking with us about the smart meter, very interesting device that electric companies are installing on homes across America, and it is another way Big Brother is spying on us. But in our first segment, we have on air with us psychiatrist, author of the book The Isis Papers, the fantastic Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Welcome to the Dino Dean Show, Dr. Welsing.
Yes, I'm very glad to be with you today. Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am, and I thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule. And the first thing that I did want to ask you is this. Could you please explain to the listening audience the Cress theory? That's your theory. Please let us know what that is.
Well, the Cress theory, I'm a general psychiatrist and child psychiatrist, and back in 1967, 68, I was training in psychiatry, and I realized that racism was causing mental health problems for black people, and I wanted to understand what racism really was. And moving from Neely Fuller's work, I was exposed to his ideas that we were dealing with a total system, that racism was a global, local, national, global system for maintaining the power equation of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness. And so I wanted to understand, why would this power equation, why would this particular power structure exist on planet Earth? And so I started looking at some of the things that were being said within the framework of the system of racism. One was that black people were supposed to be genetically inferior to white people. And another thing, that black people were supposed to be a minority. Now, the reality of planet Earth is that people who classify themselves as white are a tiny minority, fewer than 1/10 of the people on the planet. And rather than black people being seen as genetically inferior, black people are genetically dominant, and white people are genetic recessives in terms of skin coloration. So black people could cause white genetic annihilation. And from understanding that, it's like doing I call the Cress theory a psychogenetic analysis into looking at why do white people behave in the way that they do. So at the same time that they are saying black people are a minority and other people of color are minorities, they in fact are the minority on planet Earth. And instead of black people being genetically inferior, it's people who classify themselves as white who have a genetic deficiency condition, and this is not Frances Welsing making up an illness. White skin is albinism. Albinism is a genetic deficiency state defined by white people when they're talking about other animals, but they didn't apply it to themselves. But being a physician, I understood what it was and said that white skin is not superior. It is a genetic recessive trait, and it is a mutation from black. And so understanding that, you can understand why white people want a suntan. Now they are engaging in putting, especially males are, putting tattoos all over their arms, almost like painting their arms black. So suntanning and tattooing are ways of making people who really wish they had color but do not have color themselves. But at the same time, they are projecting that black people are ugly because they have skin color. And black people, I would say almost at the 99% level, have internalized that they are supposed to be ugly because they have skin coloration and because they are not, don't have the genetic deficiency state of albinism. So I went from that point to understanding, taking it further, that people who classify themselves as white, as a tiny minority population on the planet, that if they did not control all of the people of color, then they could experience white genetic annihilation. And I say that this is the core behind why people who classify themselves as white behave in the way that they do. They do everything to prevent their genetic annihilation on a planet where they are a tiny minority, which means that they have to control all of the people of color, and especially the men of color, because it's men who can impose sexual intercourse. And it is black men, of all of the men on the planet, who are feared genetically because black people have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation. And if any of your listeners don't quite understand what I'm saying, just look at our President Barack Obama, who is a black man, but his mother was white and his father was black. But because white is a genetic recessive trait and black is a genetically dominant trait, the combination of the white plus the black never equals a white person. It's always a person who would be one or another shade of black because of black genetics dominance. So I say that this is the key, and the subtitle of the ISIS papers is The Keys to the Colors, that this is the thing that black people and other people of color have not understood for the past 500 years. And we have been trying to figure out what do we need to do so that people who classify themselves as white cease abusing black people in one way or another. We just went through last week a black man who said he was innocent. Many people said he was innocent, but he had to be killed anyway by the state of Georgia. This is not peculiar to that one black man. The history is replete with black men being killed and the killing being justified, even when so-called police officers kill black men, and then they say, well, it was justifiable homicide. That there has to be the possibility of killing black men whenever the urge comes forth. Otherwise, people who classify themselves as white cannot feel consciously, subconsciously. They cannot have a sense of psychological security based on what I'm saying, the analysis, that their fundamental fear is the fear of white genetic annihilation, and the perceived threat is the black male. You see, so if you are subconsciously carrying in your mind that the person I fear most is a black male because he could genetically annihilate me. And, you know, a little while ago they put up a statue in Washington, D.C., honoring Dr. Martin Luther King, a black man who was also killed as he tried to pursue the issue of justice. Well, Dr. King posited that the answer was that people should love each other. Well, if everybody on the planet loved each other, and that was expressed in terms of sexual activity, white would disappear on the planet because it's a genetic recessive trait.
Right.
And so Dr. King, do you see, even though people talked about him in political terms, the thing that he was pursuing was justice. And as long as people who classify themselves as white do not come to terms, consciously come to terms with their fear of genetic annihilation, which controls all of their behavior.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Cressing, Dr. Welsing, I'm sorry, I have another question to ask you. And it's a very simple question, but can be complex as well. Can black people be racist?
No, because racism is power. In other words, black people do not have power over people who classify themselves as white. I mean, if a black person stood in the middle of the street and said they hated white people, that does not mean that black person has control over the life and death, the livelihood, over all areas of people activity for white people. But when people who classify themselves as white, because they have put themselves for the last 500 years, they have placed themselves in the position of power on the planet. So when they determine that they are going to practice racism, and this is why it's critically important that black people understand racism is white supremacy. Mm-hmm. White supremacy is racism, and it is the only racism operative on the planet. So black people can call white people names. Ideally, they wouldn't. And my discussion is not about hating white people. You see, hate is something that people feel when they feel vulnerable. But once you are able to analyze and fully understand why people do what they do, it's like playing the game of chess. If you sit down at the chessboard and your opponent is playing the white side of the chessboard and you're playing the black side of the chessboard, hating your opponent doesn't allow you to win the championship. What you have to do is be able to understand the game. It's just like playing football. A football team doesn't waste time hating their opponent. They have to understand first and foremost the game of football and be able to play that game, playing offense, defense, offense with expertise, but it's based on understanding football. Do you see? And we're in the position as black people of it says as though we were on a football field with a tennis racket.
Oh, my goodness.
You see, where we don't, and this is why black people greet each other by saying, hey, what's happening? What's happening?
Right.
That's said 1,000,000 times a day amongst black people because we don't understand what is going on. We have been misinformed and told that it is a democracy and everybody is equal. But black people keep running into the reality that that is not the truth. We are in a system of racism, white supremacy, a total system that is structured for white genetic survival on a planet where the white people are a tiny minority and they're genetic recessive in terms of skin coloration. And as in the work of Neely Fuller Jr., he says the system operates simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. And where we are vulnerable is because we haven't understood that we're dealing with a system, and we have attempted to deal with problems in economics as though they are somehow isolated, or problems in education, or problems with the law, or problems with politics.
Dr.
These
Welsing,
are just expressions of the system of racism, but if you don't understand the system of racism, then you just keep running and trying to put this fire out and try to put this fire out and try to put this fire out until you die with a heart attack or a stroke from stress.
This is the Dino Dean Show, and the call-in number is 646-200-0067. We are on air with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. And Dr. Welsing, what you just stated, the economics and all of those things, so you're basically saying these are just symptoms of the problem of white supremacy.
Exactly. Do you see, the problems that we see in economics are huge and major, just like the problems in education, the problems with labor and employment and unemployment. All of these are symptomatic expressions of racism, white supremacy. But until we see the system as a whole and dialogue and talk about the system as a whole, do you see, keep dialoguing about the system as a whole, that's when we have our greatest power.
Absolutely.
But as long as we are attempting this, like you said, if a patient comes in the office and the patient has a severe cough, and the doctor just says, well, let me give you some cough syrup, instead of the doctor saying, well, the cough could be a symptom of a number of things. It could be a symptom of tuberculosis. It could be a symptom of heart disease. It could be a symptom of collapsed lung. It could be, so I have to find out what actually is causing the cough.
Absolutely.
If I'm going to be an effective doctor. The person could have lung cancer.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Welsing, I have another question for you. When you first agreed to come on the Dino Dean show, you talked to me about black self-respect in the face of racism. Share with us your opinion on that comment that you made to me.
Well, do you see, in other words, it's like racism, white supremacy is a war going on against non-white people in general, black people in particular. So if you want to defeat a group that you have designated as your enemy, if you can psychologically destroy them, do you see, if you can make them demean and degrade themselves, you can do anything that you want with them. Now, we have I don't know that we're out of it. I know we're not out of it. But the programming, the psychological warfare and programming of black people to call themselves niggers and dogs and bow wows and gangsters and thugs and bitches and hoes. See, we're the only people on this entire planet who have been psychologically programmed to demean and degrade themselves at the highest possible level. So we are on a genocide slide without realizing it. And because we didn't understand the system, people thought, well, the system says to some so-called entertainers, oh, that rap music, oh, that's interesting. Well, I think I'm going to pay you, but you're going to have to change from, let's say, Public Enemy, when they did Fear of the Black Planet. Fear of the Black Planet was based on the Cress theory.
Absolutely.
But that's a political concept. So that if the system had allowed that to go forward, then people would have had a political education through the music. But the system realized that that was very dangerous. So they said, well, what we're going to do is pay these people. We're going to give them large sums of money. They don't understand the system, and they will think that they are stars. We'll tell them that they're stars. We're going to have them go out, but they're going to really be programming their people into trashy talk,
right,
destructive images of themselves. And we'll be able to do anything we want with them, because if the brain computer has negative images about self, then you can destroy the person. You can say, kill your mother, and they'll kill their mother. Kill your brother, they'll kill their brother, because the self-concept has gone down below zero on a 0 to 10 scale, where 10 is high. So this is what has happened to us, and there's no point in hating the people who classify themselves as white. We just have to get sophisticated in our understanding. This is a tiny minority of people on the planet who have worked out a system for their genetic survival by any means necessary. So
Absolutely.
This is what they are going to be doing.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Welsing, I have another question for you,
if
you don't mind. During the era of lynching in America, what was the mutilation and removing of the genitals symbolic of?
Well, it was more than symbolic. You see, in other words, what have I been saying? I said racism is about white genetic survival. Castration is to attack the testicles. The testicles contain the genetic material. So if a person is afraid that the other person can genetically annihilate them, then it would be logical at a symbolic level that the testicles will be attacked. Do you see? So then black men would be accused of looking at a white woman, thinking about wanting to think about looking at a white woman, and then he would be strung up and lynched and castrated. You see, but there's no record of black men tampering with white men's testicles.
Right.
A black man may stab somebody, shoot somebody, but they don't get into cutting off the testicles of white men because white men's testicles cannot cause, or white genetic material cannot cause black genetic annihilation.
Absolutely. We're going to take a brief break. We're listening with Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and we're going to go to the phone lines in a little bit. But right now we're going to take a quick musical interlude, and we will be right back. You're listening to the Dino Dean Show, and Dr. Frances Cress Welsing is on air with us today. Be right back. Welcome back to the Dino Dean Show. The call-in number is 646-200-0067, and you ask who that lady is. That lady is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, and she's on the Dino Dean Show today, and I must bear witness, I am in total student mode today. I am listening to my sister teach me as well as the rest of the listening audience. And Dr. Welsing, I have another question for you, and this may be a bit controversial.
Go ahead.
Do you feel that the explosion of the homosexual agenda, particularly in the black community, is being used as a form of birth control to keep black population in check?
I believe that it is a form of genocide. Mm-hmm. In other words, it's interesting that you should say that. I just read recently that the highest paid male entertainer is Tyler Perry. He's made more millions of dollars than anybody else in the past year. Now, Tyler Perry is a black man who I believe says he's gay, and then he's dressing in female garb. Now, this is very, very, very important, because if the black male can be feminized and turned into a female, then the white population doesn't have to fear white genetic annihilation. Mm. And at the same time, if males are feminized, then that is almost like the death of a people. Wow. And so most of the males that are, appearing in movies, they will try to get them to put on a dress. Now, I don't know, are you familiar with the television program The Wire?
Yes, despicable little hoodie, drug-selling little program.
Right.
Out of Baltimore.
I just read before that the male in that role, he's gay. Mm-hmm. Do you see? Now, this is not Frances Welsing being homophobic. I'm not being homophobic. I'm looking at behavioral phenomenon and wondering where is it coming from. Right. Now, there are chemicals that are in the water that are causing male frogs to become females, male fish to become females. Now, this is supposed to be in the water supply.
Wow.
You see, we have epidemic levels of black male effeminization. So as a physician, I just simply raise the question, where is this coming from? Right. What is causing this? We could look at the fact that 70% of black households do not have fathers in the home. And so male children do not have a model of adult male behavior. They just see mother getting dressed and putting on earrings, auntie putting on earrings, grandmother putting on earrings, and long hair. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Is some of it coming from this? But again, this is what's critical and important about analyzing and decoding the war that is coming at black people. And if I'm correct, I believe I am, in saying that this is a war of racism, white supremacy, the war for white genetic survival on the planet. And so you just had the Norwegian mass murderer, a young man in Norway. You're familiar with that case, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Where a number of the children that at the camp, young people at the camp, were non-white. They were of African and Asian origin. And in his manifesto, which I understand you can download on the Internet, he talks about too many non-white people coming into Europe and changing the complexion of the people in Europe. And so he felt that it was his duty to kill the non-white people.
Dr. Welsing, I want to share something with the listening audience as well. There's a book by Republican strategist Pat Buchanan. He wrote a book called Death of the West.
Right.
And I implore everybody, go read that book, because it's actually verifying everything that Dr. Welsing is stating to us today. You have Pat Buchanan talking about the declining population of white people throughout the world. And
he's right. Death
Go
of
ahead.
the West and State of Emergency.
Yes, ma'am.
And there's another important book that every black person should read, and it's called Blood and Politics. And it talks about the far right-wing movement and the Nazis, you know, the white supremacist ideology that is becoming a dominant mode of thinking amongst many people. So at the same time that black people, you know, have been led to believe, because there's a first black president, that it's the end of racism, that not so, that this is the dominant power formation on planet Earth. And the black people, if I could wave a magic wand, black people would stop singing and dancing and partying, and they would be studying.
Absolutely. And Dr. Welsing, I have a big problem with all of our people going to the club celebrating. I'm wondering, you know, what do you have to celebrate?
Well,
what's
it's
the celebration
escaping.
about?
No, it's escaping reality.
Yes, ma'am.
See, it's just like drugs are a form of, you know, reality is overwhelming, stressful, and painful, so let me escape. Let me pretend that I'm happy. I'm really laughing to keep from crying. You see, we have massive levels of unemployment, massive levels of school failure, massive levels of gender identity confusion amongst male and female young people.
Yes.
Dr.
Welsing, we're going to go to the phone lines right now. My phone lines are just totally blown up. Area code 708-207. Talk to me, it's Dino Dean. Did you have a question or a comment for the fantastic Dr. Francis Cress Welsing?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. And how you doing, Dr. Welsing?
Hi, how you doing? One at a time, please.
Absolutely. The first question is, how does symbolism affect black progress in America?
Well, you see, if the brain, I mean, symbols are something that the brain does. It's like the brain will crunch data and, you know, put it in the form of a symbol, and then you look at the symbol. You may not, if you don't understand the power context in which the symbol forms, you won't know what the symbol means. But for people who understand the power context, the symbol carries a lot of weight. Do you see? It's just like one can say it's symbolic behavior for males to have their pants dropped. Do you see? But that carries a statement that I'm available for homosexual activity.
Absolutely.
My buttocks are available.
The new cleavage.
You see, but it's, you know, the person who is doing it may not, they just say, well, the next person is doing it. But they will not have an understanding of what it means. And unless the context of racism, white supremacy is understood, where the system has to emasculate the black male for white genetic survival. So turn him into a female. You can do it by taking the fathers out of the home and fathers that are unemployed, or putting the males in prison and having them have sexual relations with each other. And that becomes style, pants being lowered in the prison, then that comes out on the street. But everybody, do you see, males are being affected, and as long as they don't understand we are in a power construct, a power system of racism, white supremacy, that of necessity has to emasculinize us,
yes,
then people will just begin to engage in letting the pants fall down. And I say, you know, you just let the pants fall lower and lower and lower, eventually step out of the pants and step into a dress.
What's your next question, caller?
My next question is, does religion have its place in Black America, or should we just abandon it altogether?
Well, the religion that black people have been given in the system of racism, white supremacy, is presenting them with the image of God as a white man. You see, black people from the time we were in formal slavery were given the religion of Christianity, and we were told that this white male named Jesus is the Son of God. That would mean that God has to be a white man, because otherwise he couldn't have a white son. And so black people are programmed to love the very image that is oppressing them, and to love that image more than they love themselves. And as long as religion is abstracted from understanding the system as a whole, then you won't understand how religion is being used. So as long as black people, as long as we are victimized by the system of racism, white supremacy, and black people, the highest form of worship is worshiping the very image that is oppressing them, then they can never be emancipated, because that's deep within their psychology. But if you understand that the areas of activity that are controlled under a system are economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war.
What's your next question, caller?
It's understandable that the system of white supremacy would present to the majority non-white people on the planet that God is white. God is a white man.
Absolutely.
And as long as they are locked into that belief, to liberate themselves from racism, white supremacy will be nearly impossible.
Absolutely. Caller, what's your final question?
Okay, my final question is, how should we interpret the office of the presidency in our lifetime of a black man being in that position?
Great question. And thanks for calling.
I would say that it should be treated in the same way as a black man having any job. Every black man that has employment is employed within the context of a system of racism, white supremacy. And for the black man to stay employed, he has to be subject to the will of racism, white supremacy. See, any job that you go on, you are subject to whoever owns that business. We are in a system of racism. The president is in a system of racism. and there are certain behaviors that black people can engage in that will bring the weight of the system down upon them. And so the president is in exactly the same position. And I maintain that it's imperative that we as black people begin to understand the system of racism, white supremacy. And to see, because it's like all white people, in other words, black people are programmed to think God is white. So then you have a white figure, they could call themselves members of the Republican Party, come out and say, this black man is bad and stupid and he shouldn't be president. And the majority of black people who are programmed to believe God is white man, they will just start following that dictate and go against a black man. Any black man who is in that position would be caught in the same trap that the president is in. And if a black man decided, I'm going to do what I want to do, so he's dead the next day.
Dr. Welsing, that is a heck of an answer to that question. So basically you're stating this, and don't let me put words in your mouth. If President Barack Obama were to do things for black America in a progressive manner, you think that there's the threat of assassination?
Absolutely. And I think that he didn't understand that in the beginning. He said it's important to have dialogue about racism, just like the Attorney General, who was appointed by the president, a black man, said, are we a nation of cowards, being unable to deal with racism? And both of them have been made to shut up talking about racism.
Quick.
The president gets death threats every day on the hour.
Absolutely.
So I think that if black people understand we're in a system of racism, white supremacy, any other black man in that office would find himself blocked with the same constraints, restraints that President Obama is faced with. And if we understand, then we would understand every attack on him is an attack on us. It's just like the killing of the Troy Davis. That's saying to black people, we can kill you when we want to kill you.
Wow.
And if the counter to racism, white supremacy, is counter-racism. But you don't counter something if you don't respect yourself. You just jump on the same bandwagon.
Absolutely.
See, President Obama's in the same position Martin Luther King was in the same position that Jesus was in. And I say symbolically, if you look at the word Jesus and look at it, spell it in Ebonics, it says just us. Jesus was a non-white man struggling against the Roman Empire. And what happened to him? He was killed by Rome.
Absolutely. Dr. Welsing, I have another question for you. Could you please talk to us about the disproportionate number of black men incarcerated and how racism, white supremacy plays a role?
See, in other words, I said racism is about white genetic survival, meaning that the enemy of white genetic survival is the genetic power of the black man. And so what do you do with him? You kill him, you lock him up, you have him unemployed, you have his children without fathers to guide male behavior. So the black male is the enemy of the state. He is under attack. That's why almost every movie that, in videos, all kind of movies have the black man getting killed. Getting killed. He thinks he's a part, then he gets killed. So we have to understand that, and again, it's not, get the hunky. That's not the answer. That is not the answer. The answer is to start being calm and start being serious. It's not about hating white people. White people are doing their best to genetically survive. Tragically, what they figured out to do is creating a system of injustice and a system of terror, especially against black people. But black people have to figure out, now, what do we do? What do we do on our side of the chessboard? And I say that the first thing is to understand what the game is. There's an African proverb that says, when the fool learns the game, the players have dispersed.
That's fantastic.
See, there's another African proverb that says the monkey was so busy doing what everybody else was doing without thinking, and one day the monkey cut his throat.
Wow.
You see, in other words, monkey see, monkey do without thinking.
Absolutely.
Monkey
Dr.
see,
Welsing.
monkey do without monkey respecting himself or herself.
Yes, ma'am.
So our challenge right now, before the next election, is to try to get as deep into an understanding of racism, white supremacy, get deeply into black self-respect, so we are respecting ourselves and respecting President Barack Obama, who is struggling to try to do something with education and health care as best he can. Just imagine if he came out and said, I really want to help black people. Please.
Well, I'll tell you.
We have to understand. See, if we don't understand racism, then we blame him.
Absolutely, Dr. Welsing. Let me just interject briefly. And talking about our first black president of the United States, I love what you just stated, but at the same token, I'm just going to give my quick opinion, then we're going to go to another caller. If President Barack Obama can do specific things for Hispanics who are not part of the white community, why can't he do specific things for African Americans?
Because the Hispanics are not as feared. See, in other words, this
genetic
is the color
annihilation
for white genetic survival is if you're black, get back. That means you have the greatest genetic potential. If you're brown, stick around a little bit less. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're white, you're all right. So the majority of Hispanics classify themselves as white, even though they're brown skinned, because they want to be white. They want to be accepted as white. So that's okay. The system of white supremacy says we're going to call them illegal aliens, but we're going to bring as many Hispanics in as possible, and we're going to let them have jobs. And so then the black people are going to be out of jobs, and maybe the black people will fight with the Hispanics, and the Hispanics will fight with the black people. And they'll be squabbling with each other, and the white people will go unopposed.
Absolutely. Dr. Welsing, we're going to go to another caller right now, area code 213-343. Talk to me, it's Dino Dean. Did you have a question or a comment for Dr. Francis Cress Welsing?
Yes, I really enjoy your show. And I'm a white person, and I listen to this witch doctor talk. And what's really funny is that she's just a racist monger. She keeps saying white supremacy, white supremacy. I mean, her whole dialect is like from the 60s. And actually, it's quite boring because I heard it many, many times before. And what she needs to do is just get her little hate group together and say, hell with the white, you know, black is in, black is in. She doesn't know what she's really talking about because her whole dialect is from different books and pages, and she put it into one form and call it her.
Oh, okay, Carla. Thank you very much. Well, actually, Dr. Welsing is an author and a psychiatrist and a great researcher. Dr. Welsing, did you want to respond to that?
Well, I would just say to the gentleman that, in other words, he is certainly aware that people who classify themselves as white have more power than the people who are classified as black or otherwise non-white. And this has been the historic reality in this area of the world. Do you see? And so what I'm talking about is talking about racism, white supremacy, which is reality. I'm talking about why it exists. And so that the goal objective is to replace racism, white supremacy as a system with a system of justice. A system of justice where no one is mistreated. No one is mistreated. And those who need the most help get the most help. Do you see? But instead of people who classify themselves as white denying white supremacy, if they say they believe in justice, then they have to face the fact that white supremacy exists. There are certain things that people who classify themselves as white have been doing for the last 500 years in this area of the world. Since this area of the world was taken away from the non-white people called Native Americans by people who classify themselves as white. The Native Americans were nearly genocided. Practically, for all practical purposes, they have been genocided and the land taken away. So if the caller is correct, instead of getting angry, it's like, start thinking about reality. Think about all of the things that he is aware that people who classify themselves as white have said about white people, just a group of people that he knows about, his family, his friends, and just think about that. And instead of, getting angry, because I'm not talking about hating white people, but I am talking about ending a system of injustice on the planet. And then when you think all over the planet, the majority people are people of color. And they may have been asleep, but they're waking up, and they are not going to tolerate being oppressed by people who classify themselves as white. Now, there can be peace in the world if the people who classify themselves as white start thinking, well, maybe we need to respect ourselves and our minority status and our genetic recessive status, respect ourselves and try to get in the mode of respecting other people on the planet so that people can get along harmoniously, as opposed to people thinking, let's just kill everybody. Let's just buy weapons and kill everybody that we don't agree with.
Absolutely.
That's not a way to, I think, have peace on the planet.
Absolutely, Dr. Welsing. We have 9 minutes left in this segment. We're going to go to a couple of more callers. Area code 708-828. Talk to me. It's Dino Dean. Did you have a question or a comment for Dr. Welsing? And please make it brief.
Yes, I do. How you doing, Dr. Welsing?
Hello, how are you?
My question to you is, do you believe that the power that the president has, will he give reparations to the black people who have already researched and found out that their ancestors were in fact slaves?
See, the question would be the existing system of racism, white supremacy. What does that system feel about giving black people reparations? The president can't, if he believed that black people should get reparations, if he came out and said it, look at what he came out and said, well, health care for everybody. And the Republican majority in the House of Representatives said, we're not going to work with him. Our goal objective is to see that he fails. So he would not be able to do that. And again, it's important, we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. The system of racism, white supremacy, run by people who classify themselves as white, are the ones who make the decision as to whether Troy Davis should be alive or should he be killed, or whether President Barack Obama can pass the legislation for jobs or whatever, if he wants, or block it, or decide that he's going to fail. I say that black self-respect would say, wait a minute, this black man is in the same situation that we are all in, and out of our respect for ourselves, out of our understanding of racism, white supremacy, we're going to do everything possible to see that he has a second term, out of our respect for ourselves as black people.
Absolutely. Dr. Welsing, I want to ask you a question about one of your contemporaries. Talk to us about the importance of Brother Neely Fully Jr., please. Tell us about him and how important it is that we talk about him.
I say that he's one of the greatest minds in the 20th century and into the 21st century. Because if we recall, Dr. Du Bois said in 1903, the problem of the 20th century, the problem is the color line between the lighter and darker races of mankind. Neely Fuller came along in the middle of the 20th century, and he said, what we are dealing with is a total system, a system structure of racism, white supremacy. And that system is about the power equation of white power over a relative non-white powerlessness. And I came along and said that's because for white genetic survival on this planet. But what Neely Fuller did, pinpointing that we're dealing with a total system structure, was one of the most important things that has been said in the 20th century and into the 21st century.
Absolutely. The call-in number is 646-200-0067. On air with us is Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Dr. Welsing, your book, The ISIS Papers, can be purchased at Amazon.com, correct?
That's right, or any other bookstore that they can order it if they don't have it in stock.
Absolutely. I'd like to thank you for coming on air with us, Dr. Welsing, and would you please leave us with a closing statement?
Well, I'll close with what Neely Fuller has said. If you do not understand white supremacy racism, what it is, and exactly how it works, everything else that you understand will only confuse you. And that's for black people as well as white people. And if I have a little bit of time left,
you sure
racism, white supremacy is a local and global power system and dynamic, structured and maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consist of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response, as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth, a planet upon which the vast and overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white, black, brown, red, and yellow, by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people.
Dr. Welsing, you're fantastic. Thank you once again for coming on air and sharing your time with myself and the rest of the Dino Dean family. You are welcome to come back at any time. One quick thing I want to ask you, can you help me get Brother Fuller on the show?
Oh, yes. Let me just tell you to give him a call at 202-484-5461.
I'm writing that down as we speak. Could you repeat that, please?
202-484-5461.
Dr. Welsing, you're fantastic. I
give you credit for having programs where